Testing, testing, testing. JB here. Hope everyone's doing outstanding. April 19th, 2024. It's a Friday. Yeah, and what a week it's been. Take a look at the market today and overnight and pretty much everything that's gone on. Let me just get this volume shut off so I don't keep hearing beeps. Sorry about that. But it's been an interesting week to say the least. And we had the start of earnings season last week. And then this week, Netflix kind of kicked out off the tech earnings yesterday. Geopolitical concerns continuing, and just pretty interesting stuff. So I'll talk really quick. Markets, the S&P. Talk about some of the things I'm looking at, like the moving averages now. I think is important. Looking at that VIX and that trend line. I'll talk about some of the put hedges I've been trading and how those might look into next week. Talk a little bit about Netflix and Dell. Talk the cannabis names, and then some other names I'm looking at. So really quick, I'll go obviously into the overall markets. Pretty crazy stuff. So we broke under that 50-day moving average on the SPY. And that was on Tuesday. Still have some chop. We had that 3 days back to back where the markets opened higher and reversed to close in the red. And now it looks like we're going to be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 days to the downside. So just pretty remarkable. At some point, there's going to be a bounce. I was sitting here yesterday afternoon doing the same rant, talking how I would like to see, I hate to see things go down, but the market goes down, right? It goes up and down. I would hate to see I would love to like to see a flush and then a reversal off that, and that would be the bottom. And we had that news last night. So, Netflix after the close yesterday, if you had painted a better picture for Netflix for their earnings, I don't know if you could. A huge beat and raise. They also announced just a monster sub ad, which they only did 1.8 million subscribers were added last year for this quarter. This year was over 9 million again. Just crazy. So if you had told me those were going to be the numbers, I thought $700. But then they come out with that red flag. I won't even call it the red flag, but I'll talk more about Netflix in a second. But either way, it traded down. So that didn't really help the market. Then overnight, you had, well, not overnight, about 9, 10 o'clock, all of a sudden you see futures dropping. Like, what's going on here? And sure enough, Israel launched a very small, precise attack. At the time, you didn't know what it was. But it was all over FinTwit. And surprisingly enough, it was all over FinTwit, but then you couldn't really find it on the news because it wasn't similar to what Iran did, which was almost telegraphed and huge, whatever, 300 plus drones and things like that. That was more, that was large scale. This was just a very small kind of sending a signal to them. But at the time, you didn't know that. So I thought, wow, this is our chance. We're going to gap, I wouldn't say limit down, but we're going to have a gap down on Friday morning. And then at some point at the open, we'll find a nice reversal point and we bounce. I put that on a watch list too, even though futures have recouped a lot of the losses. I think it was 1.7% to downside on the futures overnight. I think we were close to like 1/3% to the downside at the open. And I thought, okay, maybe we're going to get a nice reversal and bounce. And then it just seems like we just can't find footing here. And the S&P is down nearly 0.5%. To me, I thought, here's our chance, right? Here's the chance. We had the flush overnight. Of course, I would like to see that at the open so I can close the rest of my puts and then start adding some calls on some of these names that have really been beaten up over the last couple sessions. That didn't happen. So the thought in my head right now, or my gut feeling, is like I think 487.50 or so, or 487. I think that's going to come. Or even we get down to that 492 we hit overnight. I think there's got to be one more flush, clear out all the stops, clear out the bearish sentiment, get everybody capitulate or whatever you want to call it, and then I think we can bounce. So until that happens, I'm just a little. I'll continue to be wary. So areas I'm watching, obviously the 487 for downside. Now that 492, and I called it I wouldn't call it the bat signal, but that's where we hit overnight. So that's where I'd be watching as well. And then on the upside, I would love to have seen a close over 504.50. And who knows? We've seen crazier things on a Friday. The market can ramp, have a big squeeze into the end of the day, and reverse a lot of the losses we had this week. Because if we close right now, the S&P is down nearly 3% for the week, and that's on the heels of 2 previous red weeks. And that's just going to set a whole narrative over the weekend of all the bears coming out of the closets saying, here we go, here's the correction, here's the big bear market that we've been calling forever. And maybe they're right. We don't know. But I would like to see some kind of conviction either way. Otherwise, I just think the gravity's pulling things down, and it's going to be down to 47 at least on the SPY. So that's the markets. Some other things I've been watching, the small caps, I guess. So glimmers of hope here. Small caps look like maybe they finally found a little bit of support here. And You know, they've been hanging in the green for most of the day. You take a look at the weekly performance too. Um, well, small caps are down 3% as well, but today it looks like maybe this is it. So that's a good sign. I mean, on the flip side too, I hate to use the Dow, but the Dow's actually green on the week. And a lot of that has to do with United Healthcare, American Express this morning. I mean, United Healthcare, I think is up like 17% this week. Oh, it's up 15% this week. United Healthcare is the #1 weighting in the Dow. I think it's an 8% weighting in the Dow. So when a, a, a stock component of Dow index, so there's only 30 companies, and 8% of that weighting is United Healthcare, and it's up 15% this week. Yeah, it's gonna skew. It's gonna mask over a lot of the other weakness in some of the other names, and not couple. I think American Express. I don't know if it's up for the week. Let's see if American Express. Yeah, American Express up 5% on a week. So between those two names, certainly padding the Dow gains. So that, I guess those will be some glimmers of hope. And then some other things. I posted on the watch list this morning and yesterday with that VIX downtrend since the end of 2022. It seems like every time the VIX has spiked to a certain level, it's found some, the RSI gets over 70 and then it dips and reverses. And then typically when that VIX goes down, markets go higher. You look at it today, I would love to see the 1750 handle on the VIX right here at 1863. Again, we get some kind of bounce at the end of the day. I wouldn't rule anything on the table, but same token, I mean, we can go down to 192 on 292 on the SPY as well. But those are some glimmers of hope, or at least some things I'll be watching. And then last but not least is the amount of stocks under their 50-day moving average. So at the start of April, nearly 85% of the stocks on the S&P were trading over their 50-day moving average. 2 days ago, only 30% of those companies, 30% of the companies on the S&P were trading over their 50-day moving average. Now it's bounced. The last two sessions, this went from 30. Yesterday was 33, and it's nearly 36. So, I mean, that's 36% of the companies. It's still not a lot, but it's going in the other direction. So not only are the names that the 30% that were over their 50-day moving average, not only those holding their average, others are starting to recoup that. So just some things or glimmers of hope that I'll continue to watch that maybe that points to a sign of a bounce. Again, that same token, I'm not ruling out more downside here as well. So that's the overall market. I've been talking about these put hedges for some time, and the greed reset, especially in the chip semi space and the AI space. I wouldn't even say the AI space per se, but AVGO, LRCX, and some of these other names that I've been trying to trade for downside over the last couple of weeks. Or I wouldn't even say trade for downside, but using as hedges to cover some other positions that might fall if the market falls. So, this was the week. AVGO, I've been trading out of the money puts for a couple weeks over the last couple months, and typically I would get closer strikes that were $1.50 or $1.20. This time I went and got the 1200 puts, and I got those at 45 cents. Meanwhile, the 1220s or the 1225s were $1.15 when I was looking at those. But I said, no, this time I'm going to go less risk, less premium, less cost. This way, if it does go the right direction, those will be, I need it to move, but make some nice coin. By the same token, if they expire again, at least it's not as much risk that expires. And then sure enough, this was the week that if I did the 1225s, they were $6-7. I don't even want to know. I'm not going to look right now to see what those are at. Let's see. My 1200s is still kind of, I mean, I already locked some of those in for a little over 200 yesterday. I'll just hold those closer to the end of the day because I just want to protect, just in case if we do have a move to the downside, if I would be $1,200 in a flash. 1225s are 560 by 680. So instead of a 200% gainer, I could have had a 600% bagger and then held one or two just into the end of the day. But that's kind of what I hope to have when market pulls back, to have at least a hedge where I can offset some losses. And not only that, if I offset some losses, then I can use those profits to scale back or add lower strikes on some of the names that I'm bullish in. For example, DELL. At some point, I'll look to get some more calls there. But that's AVGO. We'll see how it plays out here at the end of the day. But you look, yesterday closed down 1%. Today it closed down. It went down to 12. It's at 1221 now. The low was at 1218. It's down 3%. I mean, if we pull a little bit here, I could see it at $1,200. So if that happens, I mean, time's not on my side here. I only got 2 hours and 20 minutes to the close, but I've seen crazier things happen on a Friday. So I'll continue to hold the last of those until 2:30 or so, depending on how the premiums are. Second one is LRCX. I was looking at LRCX yesterday. ASML reported earnings. Again, I talked about this yesterday on the rant. Concerns over the seasonality in the they call some fluctuations in phones, right? That's the big business. Some of these semi names is phones, right? When iPhone sales and Samsung, all those companies are doing well, it's a boom for some of these semi names. And LRCX, I think some of their business are making the machines that print the chips. I don't pretend to be an expert in that area. All I know is that there were weakness in ASML's earnings in regards to phones and TSM's yesterday. And then these names have been up so far so quickly since November, December. I think, I call it the greed reset, but these names will probably be higher in the next year, 2 years, or 6 months. But I always think some of these names that have been ran up so far so fast are going to come down just as quick, or at least we'll have a quicker move in a day or two, as opposed to trying to play a longer term put. So that's why I continue to look for opportunities. But LRCX, I was looking yesterday with that ASML and TSM earnings, and I was looking to get like 855s. It was selling off, and it did close down, but thankfully I didn't. And then I waited today. I got the 865s. Maybe I could have got a better strike, but I locked some. I only got a couple. I locked a few in to cover costs. I'll hold the rest. Again, similar to AVGO, maybe 230 or so. I didn't even look what those are now when CGC is going. Yeah, they're starting to lose premium. So that's what makes it tough playing these weeklies, because with a couple hours left, all it takes a couple minutes. Yeah, 15 by 36 now. So, but at the same token, it won't take much. If it breaks under 870, those will start to multiply quickly. So at least those costs are covered, and I could ride stress-free and emotion-free for the last hour and 15 minutes. So that's LRCX. CrowdStrike, it's not moving quick enough for my puts, and they were solidly in the green before, but they're not enough for me to lock in. I think they were up to 90 cents. Let's see. I didn't see what they are right now because I don't have my thing up. But yeah, the CrowdStrike will be my puts into next week. That'll be my hedge just in case things get nasty. Oh, they're 85 by 115 now. Okay. I mean, if they get up into the 120s, maybe I'll put an offer in just to limit it, just to lock some in, just to cover costs. But you take a look at CrowdStrike, great story. Again, another name, probably going to be 360, back up to 360, 400 in the coming months. But just an opportunity for a position to hedge myself, right? And it's ironic enough, all these analysts came out. You had KeyBank yesterday, with reiterating overweight rating. Cantor Fitzgerald kept theirs at $400 and overweight rating the day before. So it doesn't mean it's not going to $400. I see short-term opportunity to be able to hedge myself on market weakness. So that's that in a nutshell. Last but not least is MDB. And, unfortunately, MDB is stubborn. And the time I'm not in the puts is when it's going to break 320 and then get into the 200s. Another name, I'm not bearish. Great story, great cloud space, that and snow. Those names that will be probably much higher in the coming years. And they've already rallied quite a bit already. But I think, especially when the market gets weak, these are names that get hit. I mean, MDB back in February was $500. So maybe some of the meat has already been taken off the bone on the short side. I don't know, but I look at the chart and it's down. How many days in a row now? Well, this will be 4 out of the last 5 and 6 of the last 8 days. And it was at 360. It's down here. Well, it's at 331, hit 326. But another name, I'll continue to look for opportunities, just so you can I wrap my head, or I rationalize why I'm in those, and you can understand why I do the things I do sometimes. Talk about DELL. I mean, what else to say here about DELL? Look like, so this morning you had UBS raising a price target to 141 from 113, kept their buy rating. I thought, okay, this is it. This is the kick in the butt. If the markets has that reversal and we start to squeeze, it's going to close into the mid 120s, and then we can start looking at the 140s next week, and just didn't come to fruition today. Whether that's some of the other names that's falling, super micro, SMCI is just getting pummeled today. It's down 18% with no news, and the only news that came out was they announced their earnings, which can be on April 30th. And last time they announced their earnings, they pre-released numbers and the stock went bonkers. So I don't know if people are disappointing or using that release saying, wow, they didn't pre-release this time, that must be bad, and construing that as a possible negative for the stock. I don't know. But it seems to be pulling a name like DELL. DELL's very similar, right? So hopefully DELL can shake this off, get going, get back over that trend line. still love the Dell story, and I think at some point it'll be FOMO. I hope it's not going to need its next earnings to do that, or maybe it'll start ramping up into its earnings. And I think they're going to report at the end of May. It's not confirmed yet, but May 30th probably. So that's Dell. CGC is back right near highs here. So after the close, cannabis stocks rallied yesterday. Some of it was on some reports that they were working on a bill to fix the banking for cannabis. I don't know exactly the details, but the situation with cannabis is a lot of banks won't give loans, they won't do credit, they won't do anything if your business is in the cannabis sector, right? So it's similar if you go back years ago, any online gambling or any gambling site, credit card companies stay away from that. There's a code, I guess, if you try and do a transaction, it's a gaming transaction, cards were your credit card or whatever banks would decline it, right? That's how it worked. And then eventually now the regulations are easing on gambling and stuff. So that's kind of opened up the industry and the sector. Similar with cannabis. At some point when they reschedule it, maybe that paves the way for the banking sector. But for now, it's very hard to get capital if you're looking to open a dispensary or whatever, however you pronounce that word. I'm talking too fast, so I apologize. But supposedly yesterday there was rumors that they were going to work out some kind of banking bill, which they do. I think that bodes well, right? I mean, more businesses, more revenues, just more great things for the whole sector, which bodes well for CGC and ACB. So we'll have to see how that plays out. And similarly, that's why I like IIPR, because if you're a company in the cannabis sector, IIPR can get you real estate, right? So then after the close, Stars just reported their earnings, and I think their stake in CGC weighed on some of their profits. So what they did is they were on the board. Three of their folks were on the board of CGC. So those folks stepped down. Then they converted their stake into non-voting shares. And then there was a subsidiary, and they wiped out the interest payments on the debt, which is like $100 million. So pretty much Stars is saying they're stepping away. Not that they don't believe in it. They want to focus and remain laser focused on their business. So their partnership is kind of gone with CGC, but they're just stepping back. So to me, it kind of takes a little bit of the headwinds away, right? I wouldn't the headwinds, but like maybe some overhang. There's good things when you have a big company like Stars. Well, I say Stars, STZ. It's Constellation Brands. I don't know why I call them Stars. It's just in my head when I pull up the ticker. But you would think there could be somewhat. You would say maybe that's negative, but it isn't if you think of it that you thought Constellation Brands would acquire the rest of their stake in CGC. If you think of it the other way, it's going to allow CGC to do what they have to do as the cannabis business ramps up. I think that's a good thing. So I think it's net positive. You saw it sell off after the report. Now it's starting to reverse here, and it's up nearly 5%. At some point, I'll look for more strikes. I have April's expiring today. I have a couple ACB April 7's expiring, which at one point I think they were over $2, but I only have a couple of those left, but a lot of those profits. And then I'll just continue to hold those later strikes on ACB and CGC and looking for other opportunities as those ramp higher. Those are the pot names. I think I already talked about Netflix, but just another quick snippet on Netflix. It's funny how the market works. So concerning things today, I talked about the silver linings, but when you see Netflix and Intuitive Surgical not doing well despite great earnings. And some of the reason people are citing Netflix selling off, and we're getting a little bounce here, is the they're not announcing their they're not going to give out sub data anymore starting in 2025, their first quarter, which you would think as an analyst you want as much color as you can about the company, see trends. It helps you gather insights and judge is it a fundamentally sound company, how's their growth, like that. So to some, they're saying this is Netflix pretty much thinking that in 2025 and beyond, they might not have subscriber growth, and they don't want to have these volatile fluctuations in their stock price, which typically happens when Netflix reports a miss or even a beat. If they beat subs, usually that was good for the stock. If they miss sub guidance or issued bad sub guidance, usually the stock sold off. So they don't want those fluctuations, and so people are trying to read between the lines and say, wow, that's probably not a good thing. But I think they saw a big boost when they did the password sharing and the things like that, sharing accounts, so that maybe they see some of that residual stuff starting to go away. So those numbers are going to be hard to beat going forward. And then maybe they're plateauing in some of the areas. So that certainly could be a concern, but they have other levers to pull. And you have Tyson, the big Tyson fight They're trying to branch into gaming. So I think they have still a lot of good things here. But to me, the telltale signs to see it not do well today is just, yeah, a little concerning, right? So then you got to start thinking, or people start to look out and further out and say, wow, this is some of these names are kind of top for now. So we'll take it for a grain of salt. But anyway, as in regards to their sharing their sub data, I remember, I don't know how long ago this was, but I remember when Apple used to go by, how many phones they sold, how many iPads, how many iPad minis, how many Apple Watches, how many nanos, whatever they used to sell. They used to go down and list every single item they had and how many millions they sold. And then one quarter they said how many Macs, how many MacBooks. Uh, and then one quarter they said, no, we're not issuing any sales data guidance by SKU or item anymore. It's like, wait a second. So everybody freaked out. And then it turned out to be a good thing, right? It's just like one less little headache or minutia that they have to worry about, and they can focus on their business. Amazon has been the smart one all along. I remember when they came out with their Amazon Fire, the Amazon Kindle, well, the Amazon Fire phone, which failed, but their Kindle, people were like, wow, how many Kindles have they sold? How many of this? And Amazon would cherry pick when they released that data. Sometimes it would be after Black Friday, it would be on a whim. They would just say, oh, we're going to announce that we sold 1 million Kindles this week, or we're the number one sell, whatever. So they cherry picked the number, which I think you look and say, well, they're trying to hide stuff or whatever, but they don't have to give that information, right? They just have to they have to have an order, they have to file their financial, has to be audited. That doesn't have, they don't have to put how many iPads they sold on their financials, right? So same with Amazon, right? They don't have to put how many Kindles that they sell in their financials. Of course, if you're an analyst, you want to see that number, or you're an investor, you're like, wow, that would help give color to their business. But anyway, that's my rant. We bounced a little bit here on the S&P while I've been ranting. Oh, one last thing, I want to talk about that Mind Doctor, right? Excuse me, ManaDoctor. So ManaDoctor, since last week when Tim's brought it up, it's rallied. It is up 93% this week, right? So it's trading, was it $29 here? It IPO'd, or at least their offering was for $4. Their IPO number was $4. Uh, yeah, I mean, I just looked again on their website and they have more edits. Their doctors have like a little click on their doctor profile now where you click and you go to some Indian, not Indian, oh gosh. Of course, I'm having Singapore. It's going to some Singapore health site where it shows like certificates, and it's pretty much implying that their doctors are certified by the great medical field of Singapore, whatever. I don't know what medal or distinction they have, but it wasn't on there yesterday, and it's on there today. And this is a company supposedly was started in 2016 and is the number one telehealth company in Singapore. It's the number one, it's the 41st top company supposedly by the Financial Times in Singapore, growth company. So it reeks to me like Elfin. Like if you don't know Longfin, it was a cryptocurrency company supposedly, and they got through a listing on the Nasdaq through a Regulation D company, which is a special exemption that a foreign company gets to list on the Nasdaq. And they finagled their financials. They had shell company, had all this weird stuff, and nobody saw it. And the stock went from like $2 all the way up to $80. The CEO guy who had the thickest Indian accent you could ever hear was on CNBC. He was on Fast Money a couple times. This is not a scam. I can, sorry for the accent. I'm not trying to offend it. If you go on CNBC, you can hear his interview. And I was all over it. I had posts, I had all this stuff. But the unfortunate thing is, I got the puts, and the stock might have been $40 and it went up to like $70. Even though I was right, it was a scam. They had a WeWork office. That was their office. Their entire company was based out of a WeWork rented office with a little sign on it that said Longfin Financial. How crazy is that? Then they got away with it for a while. And then the stock was finally halted by the SEC, and they had to get millions of money from the guy, that the CFO. They were all selling shares. It was a whole, I don't know how people they got away with a lot of it. And then unfortunately it was halted, and people in the puts is getting close to the expiration. I think it was like April expiration. And then it finally opened and what have you. And they all got caught. I don't even know what the final thing is, but my rant's for another day. But just crazy, these things you don't think they can happen under the guise of the SEC and financial and all that stuff, and it happens. And maybe I'm wrong with ManaDoctor, but everything I look at it, I've emailed their investor relations, I emailed the company, I've emailed the doctors, I emailed an appointment site, and I haven't gotten one email back. And maybe they know, I'm the only one emailing, and they know I'm the guy posting stuff on Twitter, and they're not responding on purpose because they're so busy doing millions of dollars in revenue. I don't think that's the case, but hopefully, moral story, hopefully it goes $50 or $70 options open up, and I can get puts and make lots of money. That's it, folks. Let's have a great day. Hopefully next week will be a nice day for the markets. Nice one for markets. Oh, there's earnings too next week. Sorry. Tesla, Bank of America, IBM, CMG, ServiceNow, VKTX reports. I'm going to get some VKTX before the end of the day. Facebook, Meta is going to report. Microsoft, Google, Intel, Snap, Roku. So, I mean, a tremendous amount of market cap reports next week. So, it could be a make or break. If we find some footing, then I think the big earnings are on Wednesday after the close. Tesla, I think, is Tuesday or Monday. Then maybe we can find some footing, get back into the 500s and go from there. If not, 47. And then if that breaks, yeah, I don't even want to think about that. So anyway, have a great weekend, folks. Thanks for listening. Let's have a great day. Rock and roll.